Hello guys, and welcome back to The Work, a podcast dedicated to helping you do the meaningful work, with a big focus towards helping men focus on some of the key areas of their life so they can grow and develop personally and ultimately live the best life they can. What I'm going to talk about today is relationships, something that we probably all intrinsically know deep down are important. Some people prioritise them to greater or lesser degrees, but we all need good people in our lives. It's vital. It's a vital part of our health, a vital part of our well-being. We can't thrive fully by just trying to be an island, by just trying to isolate ourselves from the world. We're going to suffer in some form. We need people. And today I'm going to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned personally, some of the things that I've learned through the science of understanding relationships, through relationship specialists and experts, and also some of the things that I've seen within my coaching practice as to how people have quality, healthy relationships, or why I've seen people struggle. And today's podcast is something that everyone's going to connect with because we've all had relationships. And even though today might be slightly focused towards romantic relationships, it overlaps to all of our social relationships, even our previous relationships from the past. We all need to entertain the importance of relationships and how our previous relationships have impacted us. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. What I want to start by saying is that this is key to improving your health, improving your well-being, because you can probably relate to this, I know I can. When relationships aren't going well and you're struggling, that can impact your mood, your emotions, your behaviours, how productive and focused you are. But also when your relationships are going well, how does that improve your mood, affect your behaviours? So it's a key area to look at, and I'm sure listening to this you can relate to that. But also the science backs this up. We have great longitudinal studies looking at what contributes to human health and happiness. And there's a few factors there. One of the biggest factors that we see help people live longer, happier, healthier lives is quality relationships. We see it time and time again. I think it's an area that we all need to work on. And I'm going to get you to look at your own relationship with yourself today and look at your current relationships. And why this is difficult is because we do this in all areas of our life. We create a kind of convincing narrative around who we are, who others are. And sometimes these narratives are there to protect us. And I think the reason we do this with the people closest to us, because deep down on some level, we know that our relationships are a reflection of ourselves. And if our relationships aren't going well, we can start to really take that personally. Today is going to be a real opportunity to reflect and to think about things. I'm going to guide you through what makes up a healthy relationship. I'm going to guide you through what might contribute to unhealthy relationship dynamics. And as I go through, I know it's going to start to trigger things. It's going to start to make you think. It's going to start to make you look at things a little bit deeper so you can understand, so you can make better decisions, so you know where you should be doing the work. Because this is an area that we all need to work on. But as I go through today's podcast, you'll go, I'm doing well there. I've got that area sorted. And there's some areas where you probably need to look at a little bit deeper. So people influence us. Probably don't need to be a rocket scientist to realise that. And the people closer to us influence us more. Okay. And you see people who've been together for long periods of time. They've almost become one. And in some ways that can be great, but in some ways it can become quite insular because maybe they've geared their whole life, all of their priorities, all of their values around just that relationship. And as I talk about unhealthy relationship dynamics later, you'll start to see why that is. So as I said, I'm going to share with you the stuff that I've learned personally and professionally. And personally, because I've been in long-term relationships, I've unfortunately know what it feels like to have relationships break down. I've been through a divorce. So I've had quite a lot of personal experience here. And having coached clients for 17 years, they've been in different relationships. I've coached clients as they've been through a divorce. I've coached clients as they're getting married and had these amazing relationship experiences. And it's been interesting to observe as a coach how that's affected their well-being. So really, the key part to take home is, from this initial section, is everything is connected. Hence why I tend to look at the full landscape when it comes to helping a man live and thrive in the best way they can. If I don't consider relationships, I'm missing out on a huge part of the puzzle. Okay, because what we tend to do is we think, just need to be with this person and life will be good. If I can just be in this relationship, it's sorted. And what we're waiting for is this perfect person to come into our lives. But because we haven't done any of the inside work, we haven't worked on ourselves, we haven't improved our own relationship with ourselves, sometimes the same unhealthy cycles continue over and over. And we think it's just to do with the person that we're with. And we don't create the time to be introspective and go, hang on, what's going on with me? Why am I attracting these types of people? Why am I struggling in the same way with each relationship? And some people will just ask because all men are like this and all women are like that. I'm like, well, can we go a bit deeper than that? Can we be a bit braver to look at some of our own baggage and work through some of our own baggage and difficulties so we can have healthier, happier relationships, so that can then knock on and improve every area of our life? Sounds pretty powerful to me. So maybe a place to start next is what type of relationship you have with yourself. And this is probably something, I'll be honest, if you'd said this to me probably even a few years ago, I would have gone, yeah, I kind of get it, but don't really see the value in this. But when we get to the core of why people struggle, not just in relationships, in life, it sometimes is a self-esteem issue. It's a self-worth issue. They sometimes see others as better than them, or sometimes they see themselves as better than others. You know, maybe we might have one extreme end of the spectrum being narcissism. And we tend to think of narcissism as kind of grandiose narcissism, like, I'm better than you, so you need to kind of gear life around making sure I'm happy, my emotions are sorted, and if not, you're to blame for my stuff. I've oversimplified that there. But also, we see it with kind of vulnerable narcissism, where we're like, oh, everyone needs to treat me differently and special because I'm in this place, and you need to be extra considerate for me and make sure that I'm okay. Again, you're seeing yourself as different to others and separate, and the world needs to revolve around your emotions and feelings. That doesn't mean that a relationship wouldn't consider the other person's emotions, definitely, but they can't make the whole world around keeping that person happy, because that becomes a really unhealthy dynamic, and we can creep into things like codependency that I'll talk about later. So sticking to the relationship with yourself, here are some key things to think about. We think about your relationship, your self-esteem, your self-worth. It's actually been open to your strengths and your flaws. I was discussing with a client just yesterday, and what we worked through was looking at the fact that they were in quite a middle place. What I mean by that is they didn't really look at their strengths. They didn't really go, you know what, I'm pretty good at that. I'm strong there. I've got some evidence to back that up. Here's the value that I'm standing on. I didn't do that. But what they also didn't do is really go, I'm struggling a bit there, and I've made some slip-ups there. I've got a few flaws in my character. When I'm in this place and this happens in my relationship, I tend to react like this, and that isn't always the best reaction. There wasn't any of that going on. I think the reason that is because when we look at either side, there's emotions. And when we shut off our emotions because we don't look at our flaws, we also shut off our emotions to look at our strengths. So we stay in this kind of middle ground. We don't really go one way or another. And I think actually to have a healthy relationship with yourself, you can look at the painful stuff and go, oh, that's not very good. Look at the uncomfortable flaws that I've got. But you also are able to acknowledge and see the strengths. And that's the work that we probably all need to do. Can you catch yourself when you're starting to speak negatively of yourself? Now, we might have these initial judgments of ourselves and in turn, initial judgments of others. But can we catch those judgments and develop over time this mindset to be a little bit more compassionate? It's not easy, okay? But really, if we're honest, beating ourselves up and judging ourselves over and over again for, we're not good enough here, we're bad here, then that can really dent our self-esteem. Now, what I want to highlight is the difference between acknowledging a flaw and speaking negatively of yourself. Like, you can react badly at times. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You can experience anger. It doesn't mean that you're an angry person. Okay, you take ownership and responsibility for the reactions to your thoughts and emotions. You take ownership of those behaviours, but you don't let a mistake, you don't let the fact that you've kind of veered off your values dent your self-esteem. You still realise that you're a good person. You're just trying to get better. And not better as in, I'm not full as I am. You're just trying to have a little bit of self-improvement. That's a great thing to chase and to move towards. But not if you're just saying, until I improve, I'm not worthy of love. Until I improve, I'm not successful. Until I improve at this one thing, I won't feel good about myself. That can be a never-ending treadmill that you're constantly on. What you'll be able to do is, when you're in a good place with your self-esteem, you feel secure about you. You can put your authentic self into a relationship. You can put your true character across, and also be okay with the fact that the person that you're developing a relationship with might actually, not agree with you, not accept you, maybe even reject you. And sometimes in the early stage of dating, we sort of mould ourselves to fit in and go, like, if I'm like this, they'll like me. But when we're like that, people end up falling for us, connecting with us, maybe even falling in love with us for the version of ourselves that we're not. And that will actually dent your self-esteem. So remember a story that I heard just the other day about men and dating. And this dating coach was talking about the fact that these men that he was coaching had experience in the past where they wanted to pick up girls, pick up women. And what they'd done, they'd learned all of these pickup lines. I learned how to speak to a woman. I learned how to essentially get her in bed. And they did. They got laid. But even though they got laid, no matter how many times that happened, it still didn't feel good inside with their self-esteem and self-worth. And that was because they were putting a false version of themselves out there. They were getting accepted and validated for a fake version of themselves. And when you do that, you actually feel worse about yourself. So the skill in the relationship with yourself, the skill with self-esteem, the skill to building a healthy relationship is putting the authentic self, your authentic self, out there. And that can be difficult because we all want to be validated, we want to be accepted, and we all want to try and mould ourselves. Doesn't mean you don't adapt, it doesn't mean you don't compromise, but it means you don't lose touch with who you are and what your values are. Okay, so you'll be able to kind of put up stronger boundaries and go, well, look, this is some time for me now. This is what I'm going to do for my self-care and my needs. And I'm also going to support you for your needs and letting you have your time alone and you have time with your friends. And it doesn't become this kind of unhealthy dynamic where you're just constantly just trying to please the other person. You become a kind of people pleaser, because that might seem good at first and you might get away with that for a period of time, but eventually it's going to eat away at you. It's going to lead to resentment. It's going to lead to a relationship breaking down. It builds a poor foundation to a relationship when it's one person pleasing, another person taking. That's never going to lead to a long-term, successful, healthy, secure relationship. So we've all got flaws, and I've said it already, and I'm going to say it again. Okay, like no one has a perfect relationship with themselves. We all get pulled off track, and no one has the perfect relationship with their partner. It's not about that. It's just being brave enough to be aware. And if you can say, you know what, we're doing really well here, but some of these areas actually we're not so good at. And I'm going to discuss in a bit some of the areas that you can look at and go, we're doing really well here, but there will be some areas that you'll need to work on, as there is for all of us. So maybe a key sentence to kind of finish off this kind of relationship with yourself and linking it into the dating story there is, it's better to be disliked for who you are than liked for who you're not. It's better to be disliked for who you are than to be liked for who you're not. And that is a key thing that I want you to connect with. If you've been liked for someone that you're not, that will dent your self-esteem. Next section. I want you to try and learn from the past as much as you can. And this is going to help you build healthier relationships moving forward. It's also going to help you have a bit of compassion as to why you've struggled in relationships previously. So we learn from our caregivers. We learn from our previous experiences. Now, our parents teach us stuff without anyone really realising. It's not like they sit you down and they go, right, let me give you some relationship lessons. It doesn't work like that. But you pick up with how your mum and dad interacted with each other, the quality of their relationship would have seeped into your psychology. You would have learnt these things through observing as a child. And some of these examples, I'm sure, were great. Some real healthy examples. And some might not be that healthy to greater or lesser degrees. Some people would have had really kind of toxic and painful, even traumatic upbringings. And some people, maybe not quite so much. On the surface, it all looks sunshine and rainbows. But when we dig a bit deeper, there has still been some challenges that have affected how you are in relationships. So your past does influence you. It's not everything. You can take ownership of that, you can learn about that, and you can change. It doesn't have to become your kind of your destination in life, but it does affect you. Okay? So think of it like this. This is how I want you to think about it. Imagine you're trying to learn a new computer software and you've only ever seen it used incorrectly. You can only learn through looking at someone else using it, and they don't really know what they're doing either. They're kind of making it up as they go along. So you think, well, I've just got to learn from them. That's how I use that software. And then when you come to use that software, you're really struggling. You're like, I'm not getting the hang of this, can't get it. There's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with the software. Well, the thing that's wrong is that you haven't been shown the best examples of how to use that software. So through listening to podcasts like today and the knowledge that's out there around relationships, we learn, even relationship counselling, something I've experienced in the past, you learn about yourself, you learn about your relationship dynamic, and you can improve things. Otherwise, your current relationships and your future relationships just become a shadow of past relationships. And we see this, you might be aware of it, you might see it in others where they're really having the same struggles that their parents did in relationships. And that is fascinating. And I have compassion for that. Because if you haven't worked on this stuff, you're just going to become the default of that. And pick up some of those unhealthy things. Or maybe go the opposite way to what your parents did on the other end of the spectrum, but maybe there's a middle ground somewhere. So we all learn from the past. But maybe we can have that bit of compassion to go, if I can learn a healthier way to navigate relationships, I can have a better life. So let me help you understand some of the kind of key things that make up an unhealthy relationship dynamic and some of the key things that make up a healthy relationship dynamic. And you might find you can tick boxes on both sides. You might find that actually might be a bit painful and there's more unhealthy dynamics than you realise. Or actually, you know what? You might be doing a lot better than you realise. But if you don't stop, you don't reflect, then you're literally just going to be on the treadmill, hoping for things to get better, wishing things to get better, but not actually putting the work to make things better. So, unhealthy trait number 1, constant criticism. Constantly just criticising how you are as a person, or you're constantly criticising the other person. Doesn't mean that you can't pick up stuff and reflect back and say, well, when you do this, I struggle a little bit. It doesn't mean you can't communicate about things that you're struggling with or problems that you see within the relationship. But when you're criticising, in that kind of poking all the time, poke, it's just becoming draining for the other person, and it's going to start to break down the relationship. The top end example of this is something called contempt. So contempt would be actually treating your partner with disrespect, or taking the mick out of them, being very sarcastic, mockery, rolling your eyes. You might have seen that in couples. You just think, wow, this has gone from being a bit critical to actually contempt. You're actually disrespecting the person. You don't value the person that you're with. And once that happens, that's a clear red flag that the relationship probably hasn't got much life in it. Okay, because if the people in that relationship don't respect each other, it's only going to go one way. Okay, it's going to end at some point. Another kind of unhealthy dynamic would be just to avoid, every time there's a trigger, you just shut down, you stonewall, I'm not going to engage in this conversation. And if you're like that, or you know someone who is, how do you ever repair stuff? How do you ever work through anything if you can't have those difficult conversations? And there can be better or worse times to have these difficult conversations. Okay, there could be moments where you're thinking, look, right now I need to step away, I need to avoid in this moment, but you need to be able to step back into it and then re-engage in that difficult conversation and sort of work through it. And you might not even get to a place where you agree, but at least you can understand. Sometimes you might get to a place where you think, oh, okay, we're now in agreement, but you don't have to do that. You've got a perspective based upon how you're feeling, your partner's got a perspective based upon how they're feeling, and you agree to disagree, but in a healthy way, which is, I can understand your emotions, I can validate your emotions, hopefully you can see and validate mine. We're not trying to change each other's emotions, I'm not saying you shouldn't feel like that. And we just agree that we see things differently, because guess what? We've had different previous experiences, we've had different role models, we've got different triggers. So of course we're going to have different perspectives and different emotions within certain problems within a relationship. It kind of makes sense. But we expect our partner to see the world how we see it, which you're going to really struggle if you're expecting your partner or anyone to see the world how you see it. You'll see it in your own individual way. And in some ways you guys will be aligned. If you disagree on everything, that might be an issue. But there's certain little things you'll disagree on, and that's okay. We'll talk about how that looks in a healthy dynamic in a minute. So in a second. So another one. This is a classic. Trying to control the person, or like keeping a kind of scorecard. So it's like, well, I did this for you, and I did that for you last week, and that for you the week before. So you should be doing this for me now. That is not a healthy dynamic. You were in a relationship and you do because you want to do. You support because you want to support, not because you're seeing it as a means to an end. It's like, I do this, so I get this back. If I do this, that will make you happy, so I'll just do that. That's going to be a tough path for you to walk. So controlling, constant scorekeeping, that is not going to be a healthy way of having a good relationship. Another one, us men can creep into this, the constant need to fix everything. Let's fix this. Got a problem, we'll fix it. Got a problem, we'll fix it. Now in some ways that fixing mindset can be useful. It's made to problem solve, great. It's not like we're trying to cut that out, but we're saying if you're always jumping into fixing and problem solving before validating and understanding, that could just lead to more disconnection than connection. Another thing, being constantly defensive. Your partner says something to you, triggered, you put up a defensive wall. And we all have these defense mechanisms that are kind of almost sometimes hardwired in us. So we have to be quite self-aware to catch ourselves when we're being a bit defensive. But really, If I'm honest, that comes from insecurity. The more secure we are in ourselves, the less defensive we become. And that means that we can take responsibility. That means that we can say sorry. Someone who can never say sorry, again, how do you ever repair something? Okay, apologising doesn't mean that you're taking ownership for all of your partner's emotions. It just means you can take responsibility and say sorry for your role and your behaviour. Okay. The other side of it, though, is if you are... There's one side of it where someone just can never say sorry, and the other side of it where someone's always saying sorry and always taking responsibility. So you might get never take responsibility, never say sorry, or always take responsibility. Yeah, my fault again. I'm sorry. How can I sort it? I'm sorry, baby. Yeah, whatever I can do, just forgive me. Oh, I've upset you again. That again would not be healthy. There's a middle ground always. There's always a middle ground. Last little ones that I want to think about, or want you to think about, is struggling to trust. Okay, and in the next section here, when I think about healthy relationships, I'm going to give you some key steps actually in how you develop trust and how you develop security in your relationship. But you can't build a healthy relationship from a lack of trust. I'm talking about deep trust, not just that surface level, like, I trust you to, deliver the door keys to me before I go out or whatever. We're talking about something deep trust, better feel like this person can be there for you in the difficult times, in the darker times. You trust them to be by your side. You trust them to be faithful. You trust them to keep secrets. Like you really have got that deep trust with someone. You feel secure in that relationship. So not being able to trust, or just never being able to open up. Okay, and I'm not saying that if you've got these issues, you're broken, you're flawed. You've just got to look at it and go, actually, am I really trusting this person? Can I open up? Because if you can't, that means that you've got to do a bit of work, because you can't develop the secure relationship. You can't develop the healthy relationship without opening up. It's impossible. Okay, and all of these things, or many of these things that I spoke about, come from a place of insecurity. Right, here's the nice part. How do we develop healthy relationships? Okay, so respect. Earlier on I talked about contempt, and that's that lack of respect. Well, the opposite is true, isn't it? And there's probably going to be a lot of opposites here. Mutual respect. Okay, do you respect that person for who they are, for what they are for the relationship, for how they are in their friendships, for how they are at work? You just think, you know what, I'm proud to be with that person for who they are. I'm not trying to change them and say, no, if they were like that, I'd feel better about being with them. You are proud of them for who they are and you respect them. You feel safe in the relationship and they feel safe. This works both ways. It's not all about you, it's also about the other person. Do they feel emotionally safe? Do you feel emotionally safe? Doesn't mean that it becomes easy to be vulnerable all of a sudden. It doesn't mean it becomes easy to open up about your feelings, but it means that you can create a safe space to do so. If your partner can never open up, you've got to say something about the space that you're providing. Maybe you're being quick to problem solve, quick to fix. Maybe you're highly defensive. So your partner stops speaking to you. They stop opening up to you because they're worried about your reaction. You can't develop any more connection and depth in your relationship if they don't feel safe enough to open up to you. It's impossible. Okay, and then you get frustrated eventually because the relationship starts to suffer. Intimacy starts to suffer. You have more arguments, more resentment, more kind of avoidance, more kind of pulling away, and that can often happen because there hasn't been that safety and security created in the relationship. And this isn't just something you build a foundation of and go, right, we've done now, we've sorted out that emotional safety malarkey, let's move on. No, it's a constant work in progress. It's a constant evolution because life changes. There's different obstacles, there's different challenges, there's highs and there's lows. So you have to be able to adapt to that, and a part of that is creating emotional safety. Okay, having some sort of shared values, having things in life that you both care about, doesn't mean that every one of your values are 100% aligned. No. But you have some things that you share together and we go, we both really value that stuff. So if you've got one partner that really values health, another partner that doesn't mean that relationship's flawed, just means it's a little bit tougher, isn't it? And I've worked with clients where they're really working hard to improve their health and optimize their well-being, and their partner just is on the other side of the track, just like, just not bothered. But when the partner starts to go, you know what, actually I'm going to value my health as well, they become closer. They become more of a team because they're both on the same path of exploring this shared value. So I said earlier that an unhealthy relationship will happen when you can't open up. Well, guess what? A healthy relationship is built through honest, open communication. It gets said all the time, but I really want to empathise with you here. This is difficult. Let's be honest. You're working, you're stressed, you're tired, you've got a lot on your plate. Do you really feel like sitting down having an open, honest conversation, especially if it's difficult, especially if you've got to say something that's uncomfortable to talk about? So you can see why a lot of relationships start to really struggle, because we avoid that stuff. And making time for that, as much as you'd make time to go to the gym, as much as you make time to cook dinner, as much as you make time to sleep, as much as you make time to spend with the kids and your partner, part of the time just can't all be sunshine and rainbows. There does need to be a time where you can talk about more uncomfortable things as well. Not easy. That communication piece could be a podcast in its own right. It really could be. It's about teamwork, isn't it? It's about, especially in the modern world, relationships are all about teamwork. Okay, because the world is very different. We went back a generation, definitely 2 generations. Men and women, roles were kind of a bit more clearly defined. Men do this, women do that. And it was a different type of teamwork. But today it feels like, for the most part, it's about having equals in a relationship. It's not saying, okay, well, you're this and you do that over there and I do this and you're better than this, I'm better than that. It's like, well, can we come together? And yes, each individual person will have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, but can it be a real team where you can have open, honest communication, not where one person's taking control and saying, well, we're going to do it this way or it's the highway? That is never going to be healthy. Okay, if you can do some of these things, guys, you're going to build trust, and trust is such a key foundation that just needs to be worked on. Well, one of those things, and you know this, you can work years to build trust, and it can be blown away with one bad decision, and sort of cheating would be the best example there, wouldn't it? Lying, deceiving. Once we get found out, if you get found out for that sort of stuff, that erodes trust, and then it can be repaired. But it takes a lot of work and probably some couples therapy to able to work through things. So it can be done, but not easy. So trying to be open and honest. Think about the people who you trust the most. You trust them because you believe they're telling you the truth, and you believe they're telling you the truth because it's not always easy to hear. Okay, they tell you what they really think, how they really feel. And that isn't always easy to hear, but at least you go, well, at least they've been authentic. I feel like I can trust that person. I might not always agree with what they're saying, but I can trust them. What a healthy relationship will do, it will prioritise depth and connection over surface level comfort. So what it will do is it will see the value in having some difficult conversations. It will see the value in creating boundaries in other areas of their lives so that they can invest in the relationship, and also create boundaries in the relationship so each individual can go and invest in areas of life that are important to them, certain friends, certain things in their career, certain hobbies, and each other support each other for that. Okay, surface level comfort is almost like, right, when's the next holiday coming? When are we doing this in the house? When are we going on this adventure? Bang, bang, bang. They're not bad things. They can be part of a healthy relationship, but when a relationship becomes all about surface level, kind of like hedonic pleasure all of the time, then it hasn't got that strong depth to it. And then when life hits you, it will fall apart because it's built on a real fragile surface of pleasure, good things, the next thing, the next holiday, the new house, the next thing that's going to make us feel good. We just constantly just sit on the sofa, don't really talk to each other, we're both on our mobile phones, we watch something we want to on TV, we go to bed, and we make no time in the evening to actually connect. And connection is two people actually taking away distractions and prioritising each other in that moment. Can you do that for hours every evening? Maybe not. Probably unlikely. I appreciate you're busy, you've got stuff going on. But to prioritise that time, to go, look, you're more important than my mobile phone. You're more important than the TV. You're more important than anything right now, and I'm going to spend time focusing and being with you in that moment. Less is more. People go, oh, we spend lots of time together. What does that mean? That might mean you're in the same room together, but are you really connected? You can have less time together but deeper connection and build a healthier relationship. Build a better relationship dynamic because you've got that quality and depth and presence and engagement with the person rather than just simply being in the same room together. Sometimes we can struggle here, and this is sometimes when we start to struggle, is we confuse kind of heightened emotions with a good relationship. And what you'll find is healthy relationships are just a little bit smoother. Doesn't mean there's not ups and downs, but they're less dramatic. They're a little bit smoother, they're a little bit calmer. They actually have these kind of small rituals that they do together. You know, these small little habits within a relationship where it might be eating dinner together. It might be a certain bedtime routine. Something, it might be bringing a cup of coffee up for your partner. Whatever it looks like, they've got these things in there rather than potentially unhealthy dynamic is they don't do any of the small things. They don't value any of the small things. Unless it's some big trip to Barbados, then what's the point? We need that extreme excitement. It's the ups and downs all the time. That again would be a sign that the relationship isn't built from a strong foundation. Just to be calm, to feel at peace with your partner. And that's a real key question, isn't it? Do you feel at peace? Do you feel calm? Do you feel secure in the relationship? Something painful to think about as well is, have you made your relationship conditional or unconditional? And this is kind of a key thing as I finish this section off that I want you to sit with for a second. What can happen, and I've seen it with long-term relationships, is that they've said this relationship is unconditional. Whatever happens, however I change and grow, or the other person changes and grows, and however they act, however I act, we're going to sort of stay together forever. They don't say those words, but you kind of get that feeling from how they are. It doesn't mean that if you've been together with someone since you were, in adolescence, this is going on. It's not, but it can be. And actually, a healthy relationship does need to have some conditions and say, if you did this, it would end. Or if we really get dragged down different paths and our values don't align, then it's having the courage to see that and realise that, okay, a relationship breaking down is incredibly painful and shouldn't just happen, or a decision that should be made just like that. Okay, it should be a decision that's made over time. But at some point, if it isn't working and you aren't aligned and you're finding yourself creeping into more and more unhealthy dynamics, you're going to suffer so much in your life. Your health, your well-being is going to massively suffer. Your longevity is probably going to suffer. So to go through the pain of a breakup is horrible, but it can lead to better, healthier relationships long term. It's just having the courage to do that. And to have the courage to do that, you need to have the awareness and the honesty of where you're currently at in your relationships. Okay, or in your relationship, maybe I should say. But I said relationships, I suppose, because I know we're maybe thinking about romantic relationships, but you'll see this does carry over to friends and to family as well. And if you've got people that you want to bring close to you and you want to build a deeper relationship with, then you're going to need some of these components. Of course, if it's just a surface level relationship or even a family member that you don't want to be that close to, you don't have to go and have some deep, honest conversation because maybe it's not needed in that context. So you have to decide who you want to bring closer to you. But often I see it with a lot of men that actually they've got no one that they are working on building relationships with. They're not working on building relationships with themselves and improving their own self-worth or growing, developing themselves. And the relationship certainly isn't growing, developing. It's actually deteriorating, and they've let a lot of their friends go. So really they feel quite lonely and quite isolated, even though it might look like they've got people around them. So if you want to feel more connected, you want to feel better about yourself as well, and you want to have a better life, you have to put the work in to develop relationships. And that might mean letting some relationships go and being open to building new relationships. It might mean letting go of certain identities of how you view yourself and building new healthy identities around who you are and how you want to be in the world. Because sometimes I see this, especially with men in friendships, is they might have had friendships for 10, 20 years. And what happens is they go back and meet those old friends, they creep into the old version of themselves, which is nothing wrong with that. But it becomes a problem if that old version of themselves is someone that they don't want to be anymore. They kind of let that version of themselves go, but they get drawn into habits or behaviours that they used to do when they were 20 and they're now 40 and they're still doing them. Okay, so there's no judgment here. If you want to go and have some escapism and be that 20-year-old version of yourself for a weekend, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, if that's what you want and you're okay with. But if it isn't, especially if you find it's repeating itself over and over again and those unhealthy behaviours knock onto other areas of your life, those unhealthy behaviours start to bring you back from a health standpoint, you have to be brave enough to look at it. So all this stuff that I've discussed today doesn't just happen. We think it does. We think, well, cool, I've found a partner, I'm in a relationship, great. And we sort of take it for granted, don't we? Let's be honest now. We do. We take it for granted. And I had a conversation with someone I knew, or someone I know, is going through some really difficult moments right now in his relationship. And he said to me, he goes, I'll be honest, I've been taking it for granted. I now realise this relationship takes work. If I don't put the work in, the relationship is going to crumble because we think that it's all going to be okay. But such a key philosophy of my coaching is that you will get challenges, especially if you're trying to grow and develop and push yourself in your career and have more in your life. There's going to be challenges placed upon you and in turn the relationship. And if the relationship isn't resilient enough to cope with those challenges, it will crumble, it will fall apart. The stuff that I've scraped the surface on today will help you develop a stronger, more resilient, more robust relationship so the individuals in it can be stronger and support each other, and you can cope with the ups, but more importantly, the downs and the challenges of life. Okay, so let's finish off by saying this. No one has got this all figured out. No one. Okay, everyone's got work to do, and sometimes at certain times of life you have to work harder at it, and certain times of life it might be a little bit smoother and a little bit easier. The difficult times are the times that will highlight some of those areas of relationship that maybe aren't quite as secure. All the time that you're on holiday, chilling out, relaxing, life isn't too stressful, it doesn't highlight the weaknesses in the relationship. Okay, and maybe people who haven't seen their own weaknesses and their own struggles or the weaknesses and struggles in the relationship, it might just be because life hasn't dealt them a tough enough card yet. But I really think it will at some point. I don't know anyone who can get through life without any struggle or challenge. I don't think that's possible. And even the healthiest relationships on the surface, you'll know people, you go, God, they look like they're all figured out, they look happy. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I'm sure listening to this, you've come across people who have separated and you thought, wow, they look like they've got it all figured out from the outside. Well, it shows you that actually it's the inner work that's the most important work. Okay? Remember that it's okay and normal to have some conflicts and some differences in opinion and some miscommunication. That will happen. Very rarely is that deliberate. It's accidental because your partner doesn't know all of your wounds and you don't know all of your partner's wounds, and you'll say something and do something that will bring some stuff up in them and vice versa. That's okay. The skill is to be able to work through stuff, to talk about stuff. The skill is the repair. Okay, and would you want to be arguing, disagreeing all the time? No, probably not. But it will happen as things happen, as life happens. So the strongest relationships are not the relationships without problems. They're the ones where both people are willing to grow, take responsibility, and keep putting the effort in. Keep showing up consistently. Not just when it suits them. They want to be there for that person consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And we all need a little reminder, we all need a little kick up the bum to go, I think I'm taking this person that I love and care about for granted right now. I need to have more intent. And this question I'm going to leave you with will help you have a bit more intent. And I really want you to think about this deeply. Okay. Ask yourself this question. How do I want to show up in the relationships that matter to me? How do I want to show up in the relationships that matter to me? That is intent. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a better listener? Do you want to be less reactive? Okay, there are things to work on. Okay, do you want to be able to have uncomfortable conversations? Did you want to be able to be more open with your emotions? Did you want to build more depth and connection, more intimacy in your relationship? Then you're going to need to think about things I spoke about earlier. Go back and listen to some of those healthy components and be open to putting the work in those areas to talk about that with your partner. It really does start with both people going, look, we haven't got all the answers here, but the first step is discussing things together. Go, well, how can we make more time for each other? If I'm honest, I feel like we're not as close as we used to be. If I'm honest, I feel like we're going for the motions and treadmill of life, but we're not really prioritising the depth and connection. It's something that everybody needs. Okay, men sometimes think they don't need it as much. They think they can just deal with the surface level stuff. But I have seen and worked with men who are actually suffering more than they realise. They've just suppressed their suffering for so long, they've almost habituated to it. This unlocks the quality of your life because, as Esther Perel would say, the quality of your life is based upon the quality of your relationships. Don't worry about being perfect. You'll have flaws. Your partner will have flaws. Just work hard to connect, to build a happier and healthier life now and for the future. As always, guys, thank you for listening to today's podcast. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk about these subjects. Again, slightly longer one this week. Any questions, let me know. And if this has resonated with you in any way, please share it with somebody you think it would help, because I put a lot of work in behind the scenes to make sure this content is valuable and credible, and I'd really appreciate that. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you very soon.